We're the only people in the United States that are sitting on evidence of the $300 million worth of properties that they funnel customer funds to. I knew he was bad news when I figured out what he was doing with regulation. And then we started figuring out what they were doing as business practices at FTX. We never dreamed when we got into this, the insolvency was as big as it was. There are so many bad business practices that they were creating fake markets.
Sam walks in, says to his lawyer, "That's Bitboy Crypto." And you said, quote, "He looked me dead in the eyes and we had the moment."
As soon as I walked in the court, he saw me over his lawyer's shoulder. He turned around and whispered to his lawyer, "Oh my gosh, Bitboy is here." The only people above him in this scam are his parents and Dan Friedberg. This was all about, from the beginning, figuring out a way to make money to support the Democratic Party, to be able to drive regulation the way that they wanted it, to continue that scam over and over again. Just pumping money into FTX, pumping it into Democratic candidates, and rinsing and repeating over and over again. People see who I am and they see what I'm about. And I feel like for the last couple of years, like, who I am has really been misconstrued in the media and in crypto circles and on Twitter. And I feel like now people finally see what we're about. We're not just about money. We're not about, doing things for clicks. We're about real change in the world. The swatting incident, I mean, it humanized me to a lot of people that don't like me. They understand, like, okay, I may not like him, but, like, yeah, we don't want guns pointed at his kids, you know? My fear receptor is gone. At this point, I'm just moving and operating the way I want to move and operate, and can't anybody stop me.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ben Armstrong, the broadcaster, investor, and cryptocurrency influencer. You are the founder of the Bitboy Crypto YouTube channel, where you post daily market updates addressing all the latest news to a massive community of crypto enthusiasts. Your aim is to provide education and entertainment in equal measure, and have amassed the largest following of any crypto platform with over 5 million total subscribers. You have spent the last month in the Bahamas on the trail of Sam Bankman-Fried, having previously warned all of us about the impending collapse of FTX. Following his arrest, you said SBF deserves to go to jail for a very long time, and that you are concerned that extradition to the US will make it too easy and make him, quote unquote, just another white-collar criminal. You believe the fallout from this controversy will continue to have a deep impact on the crypto industry and individual investors alike. Ben, welcome back to London Real.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely glad to be on. Always enjoyed chatting with you, Brian. And I'm sure we're going to get into some good stuff today.
Oh my gosh, we got a lot to talk about. I just want to say that you were here on September 21st on this show, talking all about Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, warning us what was going to happen. I interviewed you on stage in Dubai at the GITEX conference, and you were screaming out that this was going to happen in earshot of the FTX booth, right? Yep. And you know, I do what I always do. I sit and listen, and we listened, and then we watched it all unravel. You were just down in the Bahamas. You were in the courtroom where Sam walks in, says to his lawyer, "That's Bitboy Crypto." And you said, quote, "He looked me dead in the eyes and we had the moment." Ben, what has your life been like the last couple weeks? Explain it.
It has been absolutely insane. I mean, we've been front running this story, obviously, for a while. Now, when I say front running the story, I knew he was bad news when I figured out what he was doing with regulation. And we started figuring out what they were doing as business practices at FTX. We never dreamed when we got into this, the insolvency was as big as it was. So, you know, do want to say that, like, it's not like when I was on your show, it's saying it's definitely insolvent. We were explaining that there are so many bad business practices that they were creating fake markets. Well, I guess the next step of that was obviously, well, if they're creating fake markets, then that's going to have an effect on insolvency. And the way that worked is when they were creating these fake markets with synthetic assets, people would withdraw the real assets, and that's what was leaving the insolvency hole, and they would counterfeit more coins to cover it. But, my life has been really crazy ever since I was a child, I guess. But it's been a little bit crazier here the last few months as we've been tracking Sam down through the Bahamas. We were the first people to go down there and get inside of the Albany and try to get him to talk. His parents called the security on us. It wouldn't let us. I mean, what is he, 12? Parents called security on us, and they ended up kicking us out. But we went down there to get answers. And what people are going to understand when there's a full documentary that's going to be coming out about all this that we've been working on. Along with another with a documentary film group. They filmed one of the GameStop shows on HBO Go. People are going to find we're down there to get answers. We were not down there for clicks. I mean, did I know that when I went down there, it was going to break Twitter and people were going to go insane? Yeah, obviously. Is that why we did it? No, we went down there because I want answers to what is happening down there. We still don't have answers, but we don't have answers from Sam, but we've uncovered so much stuff, including we're the only people in the United States that are sitting on evidence of the $300 million worth of properties that they funnel customer funds to. And we know that because we've talked to Congress. Nobody else has it for us. They're waiting for us to give that to them to be able to nail down some stuff that they're hiding from the bankruptcy. They think it could be up to $1 billion worth of property down there that FTX is hidden. We know John Ray, the CEO of FTX, now the bankruptcy lawyer, he just came out and said, oh, yeah, actually, now we found almost $1 billion worth of cash.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more than that down there in the Bahamas, and we're at a very pivotal time right now. As he's been extradited this morning, the Bahamian government is trying to steal all those assets. They're trying to steal all those assets for themselves, keep them out of the bankruptcy so they don't go to customer funds. The Bahamian government's wrapped all up into this as well, and that's what people on the ground don't know. So the thing I'm the most proud of over the last couple months has been we actually know what is happening down in the Bahamas with the government and their relationship with FTX, and nobody else has this information. I mean, we went to the trial on Monday, man, as soon as I walked in the court, he saw me over his lawyer's shoulder. He turned around and whispered to his lawyer. Somebody that I know that was there actually heard him say, oh my gosh, Bitboy is here. And so there was definitely a moment where he sat down on the left side of me and I turned and I waved right at him. We stared me dead in the face, had the moment. That's what I had really been waiting for. Everybody knows he wasn't going to answer the questions that I have. He was absolutely not going to ever answer the questions I have because they're too hard. If he can't answer the softball questions they were asking him on Twitter Spaces and from the New York Times and on Good Morning America, then my God, he has no chance against me. And he knows I'd shred him like a piece of paper in a shredding machine.
Is that the first time that you two were together in the same room in that courthouse?
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen him in person.
Would you have ever guessed that would have happened in a Bahamian courtroom as your first meeting, not at some conference or some investor dinner or something?
No, I would have never imagined. I mean, I go back to 2019. I cannot remember exactly what it was, but it was the first time that he really came across my feed. He was in a big argument with somebody over DeFi, and it was turned into a big thing. It was, I guess, in November of 2019. I was like, who is this guy? I really started looking into him. And then, I know Wendy considered him to be a friend at one point. I love Crypto Wendigo. I mean, we've been together creating content since the very beginning of when we started our accounts. And for a long time, she had like a pretty good relationship with him. And so, it's kind of thing where I've kind of watched at a distance. I have friends that have been close to him. But I had never spoken to him before. Now I did speak to him when I was in the Bahamas the first time a couple weeks ago. We did text back and forth. He told me what he liked on his pizza. Very bizarre. I don't know, did you ever see those screenshots of that conversation?
I saw that because you posted him because he had just unblocked you, right? And you guys were DMing. And
well, he unblocked me as a result of our text messages.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
And so one of the things, the most bizarre thing, he asked me if I was the CEO of FTX, in charge of everything global, all the assets, what would I do? And I was just like, what a bizarre question to ask a YouTuber. As the CEO of the second biggest crypto empire that exists, what would I do? Yeah. And it just goes to show the delusion of him.
I saw that and it struck me as weird, although his behavior across that whole 2-week period seemed very weird. I want to take it back to a couple points, but the big one you mentioned was you went down to the Albany, which was that kind of penthouse place he was living. And I watched you go down there. Again, I just hung out with you in Dubai, and you've been on the show many times. And so it was just really, it was like a weird reality show watching you go down there. Everyone's watching you kind of live on YouTube. what struck me as odd is that you're like, we're the first ones down here trying to get an interview. And this is like a 10, 20, $30 billion, company that's gone to zero, and no other media had gone down there. And then, of course, after you went down there, everyone came in with their interviews. But it was just strangely odd. The New York Times continued to go ahead and have him remotely into their dealbook thing, which was, again, extremely odd. And then
not when you know the relationship between Andrew Sorkin and SBF, which is a whole other story. But
right, okay, and I want to get into that. But like when you go down there and you're there at that, did you find it odd when you were down there and nobody else was there? What was the vibe? Because when you get on the ground, you start picking up lots of little details.
I would say it surprised me 0%.
Okay.
I had people that that's why we went down. That's why we went down there, because I was so sick and tired of hearing people say things like, he's being protected by the military down there. I had somebody literally tell me, well, be prepared at the airport. You're going to get stopped by the military. No, I'm not. This guy doesn't have friends. You've seen his parents are the ones protecting him. His parents are the ones, they're actually allowing him to incriminate himself so they don't go to jail. But you saw them on the balcony, walking around, pacing on the phone. There's no security there. Funny story, actually. When I was down there this last week, we had a full security team. Do you know who my full security team was?
Who's that?
His personal bodyguard for years. So we had the entire FTX real security team that was in charge of Sam was helping us down in the Bahamas this week. They were protecting us, which was a very interesting, twist of fate to say that, because they don't have a job now, obviously.
Yeah.
There's nobody down there that, there was nobody down there protecting it. He couldn't afford security. Sam's out of money. The government has taken all his assets. He doesn't have anything. And I knew that was the case. You could just tell the fact that he was walking in a grocery store by himself, the fact that they've got footage of him running away from someone in the Albany, which I hear really was him if people have seen that clip. I knew there was nobody down there. All I wanted to go down there is go and show everybody. And that's what we did. So we had managed to basically, within a couple hours of landing at the airport in the Bahamas on Saturday, I had a full team there 36 hours before me, scouting, trying to figure out what we were going to do. 2 hours after I landed, we were in the Albany. It's not hard. It's not hard to get in there. We ate dinner. We had dinner at one of the restaurants before we went and we really started doing stuff. We went and took the famous picture of the penthouse up there that just said, like, Sam, where you at? Like, we're out here. Can't remember exactly what it said, but like that was what really got people going and people tweeting. And then we went and we had dinner, had some wings and, had a little steak. And, we chatted with all the people at the restaurant where we were. I can't remember the name of the restaurant in the Albany. The Albany is a big place. It's huge. Okay. It's a compound.
It's like
then, go ahead.
But the Bahamas is like an hour away from Miami, and yet no other media had bothered to go there for what anybody could tell was probably going to be the biggest story of the year.
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're scared. Because people are scared out there. I don't know why. My fear receptor is broken and people haven't been able to figure that out yet. Like what we did, he was so safe and he was so comfortable in that penthouse. And there's a reason why that media tour started right after we were there. We did the equivalent of threw a digital sledgehammer through his window. As soon as people realized that there was no protection and there was nobody down there, everybody felt like we can go in and we can go after this guy and we can ask questions and we can kind of get interviews. We destroyed his safety blanket. That's all that ever needed to happen. Somebody just needed to go down there and do that. And, I think we had actually talked about going down there about a week and a half earlier, but I said, well, he's going to get arrested any day now. Any day he's going to get arrested. Well, it goes a week and a half later. We're like, he ain't getting arrested. He's comfortable down there. And one of the best things we did while we were down there in the Bahamas is connect with Lincoln Bain. We did a panel with him on Saturday night. Lincoln Bain, he ran for prime minister. He lost. I believe 100% the next election he's going to win. We're going to help him win because this guy he's a lot like me. He's a clean up corruption guy. He does not stand for what's happening in the government there. And the Bahamian people are awesome. Like, we never met one person from the Bahamas that was rude or disrespectful. They're all such great people, and they don't deserve what the government does to them. And then you look at what the United States has done to absolutely rape their resources. The Bahamas gets a fraction. They have like over $1 trillion worth of exports a year, and the United States takes almost all of it. And so we really want, like, I've grown to really love the Bahamas and really grown to love the people that are down there as well. And so working with Lincoln on the ground has given us insight that other people just don't have. Like, you don't get the insight of a person that not only he has a law degree, he's got another degree here in the United States, got a law degree from London. He's ran for prime minister. This is about as boots on the ground as you can get in the Bahamas. And he's really been helping us and guiding us. And we got a lot of next steps. We're filing a lawsuit. It's either being filed today or tomorrow against Sam and against FTX. And I'll tell people this. If we win this lawsuit, it is going to have massive repercussions. Unfortunately, obviously, as it is a lawsuit, I don't want to get into the details because I don't want to show our hand. But there's a way that we're going to help people get money back. And it's going to be the kind of thing that people are going to really, really love to see that we're doing and we're fighting for. And nobody else is fighting for the people. The media doesn't care. The ABC News does not care. Good Morning America does not care. YouTubers don't care. All they want to do is they want to sit and they want to report on the stories and they want to take a 30,000 foot view. We're the only people that are kicking in doors and trying to get answers and trying to fight for the people.
What comes next now? Sam is still in the Bahamas. We think.
No, he got extradited this morning. I believe he's en route right now to New York.
Okay, where's he going? To New York? Is he going to that Southern District of New York prison, the same one Epstein was in?
That's where he's going.
That's where he's going, which is not a nice place to be, right? It's like Lower Manhattan or Rikers Island. Or
it's not Rikers.
Okay.
It's not Rikers because he's going to be federal.
Okay,
so it's going to be a white collar federal prison that he's going to. But he's actually worked out bail supposedly. That was part of the extradition. We believe he's actually going to be out on bail. I don't think he's actually going to go to prison. He's got to do a hearing, which will probably be tomorrow, I would guess, or later this week, maybe next week. I mean, it is Christmas, so I'm not sure. Maybe it'll change the schedule a little bit, but he's not going to sit in there long. He's going to get the Elizabeth Holmes treatment. He's going to get out, which I'm really shocked at. And it's not happened yet, but He doesn't have any friends. That's what people have to understand about Sam. He doesn't have friends in the government. He is crapped over every politician he gave money to. They're not friends of his. He doesn't have money, so it's not like he's paying people off. His parents are on the outs. People want to stay away from his parents. They're toxic. They're the ones that were really behind this whole scam. So they're not going to help him. They're almost out of money. Their assets in the Bahamas have been stolen. So I'm really confused on what kind of leverage he's using to be able to get this preferential treatment. It's really interesting because everybody knows in the world of politics, you're only as good as how much money you have. When you don't have money to support politicians anymore, then why would they help you? You're of no use to them. You're only an albatross around their neck, and that's what he is to a lot of people. So it is a little disappointing that he was extradited. We want to see him punished more in the Bahamian jail. Once he get here, he's just another criminal. And he's going to get out on bail as well. And, that kind of sucks because he's going to be free. You have the man who literally has screwed over more people financially than anybody else in history. And he's going to be free, even if it's only for a couple years. But at the end of the day, this guy's getting serious time. He's not going to, there's no way to flip. Caroline's already flipped on him. There's not bigger fish here. There's not bigger players. The only people above him in this scam are his parents and Dan Friedberg. And Gary Wang as well, but Gary Wang's CCP, he's already back in China. We'll never see Gary Wang again. He's a ghost. Never expect to see anything from Gary Wang again. He'll probably disappear forever. Sam Trabucco, former CEO of Alameda, he'll probably be in some trouble. But, I mean, he's still under SBF. So I'm just not sure what leverage he has here unless he rats out his parents. If he rats out his parents, then that could be some serious stuff. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think they brainwashed him and kept him doped up since he was a child.
And then again, does the government really want his parents, or are they happy just with him? You mentioned Carol. She was spotted getting coffee in New York a couple weeks ago. Are we pretty sure that she's there? And did she cut a deal? And also there's the Ryan Salame guy, which I think is now reported that he has cooperated with Fed officials.
He's a whistleblower.
Okay, yeah. So
Ryan Salame is the whistleblower. He's the one that outed the entire thing to the Bahamas.
He did. Okay, but once he saw there was problems, he told the whole Bahamian government that it was all Alameda was taking customer funds and
he was shocked. So Ryan Salame comes out as there's a couple people that come out looking like they're good actors here, and then we'll get to Caroline, of course. But when it comes to the good actors, you have Brett Harrison, looks like he was a good actor, who's the CEO of FTX US. Then you look at Ryan Miller, who is the attorney for the bankruptcy. He was in some of those meetings with Gary Gensler and FTX. So I'd be very interested. I think he's going to talk one day and going to explain what happened in those. So he looks like he's a good character. And then Ryan Salame, he's the one that initially blew the whistle on the entire thing. Now, comes to Caroline. So you mentioned she was in New York. That was what they call, and I've talked to lawyers about this who know what's going on in this case. That's called the Queen of the Day tour. That's where basically you show up and you do a photo op. That was not a mistake that she was at that place. She knew 100% sure when she walked into that coffee shop, she was going to be photoed and put on Twitter. She didn't try to hide it. She had the dog with her, which we heard the dog died actually this week due to negligence. What we heard, unfortunately, but it was the FTX pet. She had the dog with her in New York. She got the pictures taken. This was a message to Sam,
right?
A message to Sam that I have flipped. Now, why would she flip? Well, I said on November 9th, when all the stuff went down with Binance, I made a video. And in that video, I literally say, Caroline, you're going to have to flip. It's going to be the only way to save yourself. And sure enough, she has. The reason why...
She was the CEO of Alameda or head of risk management?
She was the CEO of Alameda.
CEO of Alameda, yes. Right. So that was the trading, the venture capital arm. Yeah, the venture capital arm that they ran kind of on the side with all the capital from FTX whenever they wanted. Basically. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the thing about Caroline, I really want to say here, though, is that there's a reason why the timing of that photo was very important. That was at the very end of that week where Sam had been doing interviews that entire week long, right? Sam was trying to do two things in these interviews. Well, three things, really. He was trying to look like he was dumb and didn't know anything. Nobody buys that. Number two, he was trying to reposition what he did as not a crime, but a mismanagement of funds, because there's a difference. A mismanagement of funds and in fraud are two totally different things. Number three, he was trying to blame everything on Caroline. If you listen to everything he said, it was, oh, Alameda did that. I have to check. Alameda did that. Alameda did that. When he was saying Alameda, you can basically substitute that with, to say Caroline. Every time he says Caroline or Alameda, he was saying Caroline. So her reaction to that was to flip and to basically realize she needed to get an attorney. And the attorney she got is very famous for plea deals. And she's going to get a really good plea deal. It's not really advantageous for us to go into all the wrongdoing that Caroline did, because why? She's going to get off scot-free, most likely, maybe a small sentence. It's really to focus on the people that she flipped on. And obviously SBF is the top of that list. The question will be, will she also be flipping on Dan Friedberg, and will she also be flipping on the parents?
Okay. Now the parents, these are, his dad's a Stanford professor. His mom maybe is too.
They're both Stanford
professors. Again, big involved in the charities, and now nobody wants to even be seen with them at the universities.
Charities. Yeah. Big involvement in charities. That's not actually true. But
you want to just take 2 minutes and lay down the parents for me. What's the steal? Yeah. What's the story? What's Bitboy's version of how the parents are involved in this whole thing?
We call the parents the puppet masters. That's what we call them. They were directing the show the entire time. Dan Friedberg, we call the architect. He is the guy that was the general counsel from FTX. Who was from Ultimate Bets previously. He's the one that built the whole scam, right? Well, when you look at Joe Bankman, first of all, people may not know this, Joe Bankman actually helped Elizabeth Warren directly with tax regulation in 2016. So we have a direct connection between Elizabeth Warren and Sam Bankman-Fried. Elizabeth Warren's daughter interned for Gary Gensler. Of course, Gary Gensler met with SBF. Also, Gary Gensler's direct boss at MIT was Caroline Ellison's dad. So you start to see the twisty, tumbly overlap of all the sloppiness in these families. And this is a very sloppy organization, by the way. People are going to be shocked. Like when it comes out, all the evidence we have of the video and audio recordings of people admitting wrongdoing at FTX, it's unbelievable how sloppy they all were. The parents, the mom had a PAC, a Democratic Party PAC to support Democrats. Her other son, Sam's older brother, Gabe, also has a very similar PAC that supports Democratic candidates. This was all about, from the beginning, figuring out a way to make money to support the Democratic Party, to be able to drive regulation the way that they wanted it, to continue that scam over and over again. Just pumping money into FTX, pumping it into Democratic candidates, and rinsing and repeating over and over again. I say rinse and repeat. There's a lot of money laundering going on as well there. But the parents from the very beginning have been directing this show. It's my opinion that they have basically kept Sam doped up on Adderall, brainwashed politically from the very beginning, since he was a kid. Now, I'm not saying they were setting this up since he was a kid, but this was the perfect thing for them to usher in once they had him brainwashed and doped up. And when you look at Joe Bankman, okay, Joe Bankman was in charge of all their philanthropic efforts. Well, I actually met with a lady in Florida who had a charity that had several meetings with Joe Bankman about supporting through FTX. It was a very, like, I don't want to say it because I don't want to dox who she is, but it was a very noble charity that, like, anybody, most people in America would want to support. It wasn't anything political, wasn't anything, it's something that everybody loves, think pets, dogs, children, right? Like, everybody likes to support children, everybody likes to support pets, something in that area. And she had 10 meetings with him or whatever it was, a lot of meetings, and it didn't get approved. Go look at all of the philanthropic things that they did. It was only supporting the pandemic or preventing another pandemic, which, once again, go to Caroline's dad and find out he was integral in writing a report on how to prepare for pandemics. And then also, number 2, political candidates. That was it. This was not philanthropy. Right. This is what, Sam talks about all the time. Like, oh, it's philanthropy. I don't care about my money, which Andrew Tate says, like, I don't trust anybody that's a billionaire that says they don't care about money. That's stupid. I agree 100%. But if you look at their efforts, you know who they gave money to? The Bahamian police station. They gave them iPads so they could conduct their business better, and they could buy them off so they wouldn't come arrest him. If you look at everything they did, it was all targeted and it was all pointed at how they individually could benefit. And so that was the scam of the parents. They set the whole thing up, and Sam went along with it. Now, Sam knew about the wrongdoing. He's definitely a criminal. Don't get me wrong here. But the parents are really the puppet masters behind the entire thing.
Somebody said that based on the amount of money he funneled into the Biden campaign, you could make an argument that Biden would have lost without it. Is that a bold statement? Is that possible?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you look at the overall money, now individually, he gave Joe Biden $5 million, right? So that's not that massive amount. But here's the really interesting thing. To get around political maximum contributions, they would break down their contributions into many, many, many other people's names. So we don't even have the full picture yet of how much went into the Democratic Party. And look, there was money that went to the Republican Party as well, but it dwarfs into comparison. I mean, look, money buys elections. People know that, right? Like, obviously, I think it's like, if you go back through history, it's almost the number one, whoever raised the most money won the election every time. There's some stats to back that up. I definitely believe that without FTX's help and without, Joe Biden receiving all this money from Sam Bankman-Fried, that it definitely would have been a much closer election. And if you look at the midterm elections as well, there's a lot of questionable stuff that happened on the Republican and the Democratic side when it came to FTX. I mean, literally a line on the FTX balance sheet said, Trump lose. That was one of their items, and there was millions of dollars dedicated to that. So I definitely believe that happened. And when you look at, SBF's tentacles and how far they went into, let's say, Twitter, we don't know that yet. We're not sure how far all this went. But yeah, I think that is definitely a fair assessment. I think raising less money, especially millions and millions of dollars, could have had a definite effect on the election. And
with all the split contributions, this could be 50, 100 million or plus dollars going into Democratic Party. I think he was quick to say, I gave Republicans money through other vehicles, but we don't know if that was a knee-jerk reaction to where he didn't just get said, oh yeah, I'm with the leftist media. So we still can't confirm that, right?
Well, he definitely did give money through Ryan Salame actually was the main person that they were giving money to the Republicans through,
right?
Which is quite interesting. But Sam literally said he didn't want to give money to Republicans publicly because the left would have criticized him for it.
Right.
It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Fascinating.
But I think when you look at the Republican side of things, they really did give money to Republicans. And it makes sense because, look, they were trying to buy political favor. It wasn't as much about one party winning or the other. They just felt like the Democratic Party, I believe, they did want them to win, but they wanted to have both sides covered. They wanted to hedge both sides in case the other side won, that they have their claws into Republicans as well. Because when you look at what they did with the DCCPA, which now is most likely not going to get passed because Sam touched it, we had sent our bill, our bill, which will be public later this month, to FTX for funding. That's kind of how this whole thing started between me and Sam. And they sat on it for 3 weeks. And during that 3-week period, that's when he went behind our back, tried to sabotage our bill, tried to steal our political backers, and then tried to go to all the senators and get on the DCCPA. That's the time frame when all this happened.
This was 6 months ago, roughly?
No, this would have been September. This would have been August, the end of August through the middle of September is when all this happened.
So that's when you really started having beef with Sam, 3 months ago.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he tried to steal, I can't wait till I say who the person is. Can't say who the person is quite yet, but he tried to steal one of our main political backers from us.
Right.
And this person came and told us everything that they were doing. And thank God that this is a loyal person to us. And that's how everything started between me and Sam, because like, you don't freaking steal from me. You know, like I'm doing this out of my good, sending you this thinking you're a good actor and you want to help us with fair crypto regulation, and you slap back, try to steal people from me. And then you go try to create your own regulation through the DCCPA, stealing senators that were going to back what we were doing. It really, really felt very personal at that point. And that's why I wanted that personal moment with him. I want him to have nightmares about me when he's in prison.
Right. Because you wanted crypto legislation that was fair and would promote peer-to-peer use of crypto. And he was busy working on legislation that was going to be very favorable to exchanges like his, basically. And he was basically giving money to both parties to push that whole bill and agenda through. And he probably would have been successful if he had kept going at that rate. Yeah.
I mean, if everything did not unravel, but you know what? I don't think it would have been successful. Let me say this. And I know Charles Hoskinson. So Charles Hoskinson is someone who we also sent our bill to funding. We sent our bill to him for funding. He declined to fund it. And there was some reasons, and we talked about those reasons. And I actually told him what Sam was doing. And before I even told anybody publicly, I told him what Sam was doing. And he confirmed behind the scenes that Sam was doing all the stuff I said he was. And I thought that was very interesting. Charles has a lot of good ties into politics as well. But when people found out that he was pushing a federal bit license, the worst piece of legislation in the history of crypto is the New York bit license. There's no way the crypto community was going to let that go. There's no way that bill was going to end up passing in its current form or in its previous form, because people were just not going to be okay with that. They were not going to be good with, that kind of legislation. There was going to be a huge outcry, and you saw it. Once he put out his manifesto, before it even was uncovered that they were insolvent, he was already having to back away from a lot of the language that he was using because the crypto community was never going to allow it. The fact that he thought he could just slide this through and people would be like, oh, sure, let's only favor centralized exchanges is really asinine to me. And it really showed his misunderstanding of, the environment that he was in. He was never a crypto guy. Sam Bankman-Fried was never a crypto guy. If you ask him about this, he'll say, I always saw it as a good opportunity. That's all he'll say. Yeah, and that I've said this recently on one of my shows. If you look at Sam, he was a risk arb guy. He started doing it to make money, right? Risk arb. And he could make money with this spread, and it was all about making money. And I'm not saying, we'll talk about CZ in a bit, but like there's other actors in the crypto community that got into crypto because they love crypto. They love the concepts of crypto, the transparency, the trustless, the peer-to-peer value. And if you do look it back, and I know hindsight's 2020, you're right. This was a guy that got into it to make a lot of money, as opposed to for all the altruistic reasons that crypto exists. Gary Gensler, let's talk about that. We know Sam met with him. You were calling out Gary just as loud as Sam when you were talking to me on the 21st of October when we were in Dubai as well, or in October in Dubai. How is Gary mixed up in all of this, this tangled web? Well, I want people to understand. You have the world's top regulator, right? The SEC dwarfs the CFTC in comparison. The world's top regulator meeting regularly with the largest fraud in history for a 6-month period and couldn't sniff it out. To me, at best, Gary Gensler is incompetent. That's the best. At the very bottom floor here that we can say about Gary Gensler is he is completely incompetent at his job, okay? At worst, he's one of the most corrupt people we've ever seen in the history of the government. The truth lies somewhere in between those two poles. But there's no scenario where Gary Gensler comes out of this unscathed. I think by the end of January, Gary Gensler is out. How could he survive this? How can you, as a government, look at a man whose entire job is to regulate and keep investors safe? How can you look at that and look at him meeting with the biggest fraud in history for 6 months and say, oh, we're confident in the job that he does? You can't possibly do that. And I got news for Gary Gensler. His days are coming to roost. Guys, when this House Oversight and Reform Committee commences from the Republicans next year, it's going to be very bad for Gary. These Senate banking hearings, as they continue, they're going to be very bad for Gary. The House committee, the Maxine Waters committee that will be moving most likely to Kevin McCarthy, very bad for Gary Gensler. You have Tom Emmer calling Gary Gensler out, one of the top, known politicians in Washington right now. I don't see any way he can possibly survive this. There's no way he can have an explanation. It was very funny as soon as the U.S. filed charges against Sam, right after that, you got like the SEC filing charges against Sam.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long?
I know.
We all knew, everyone knew this was happening. Why did it take so long for the SEC to make those charges? It was almost like they were trying to hold out as long as possible. And then when you look at the Caroline Ellison, the Greg Ellison, her father being the direct report for Gary Gensler at MIT, and that they all hand in hand were working on these pandemic papers. There's just so much corruption there. It's not even funny, and it's so easy to spot, and they can't hide it. The internet sleuths today are so good that if there are connections, they will find them, and thank God for them that they found all these connections and were able to show all the corruption.
One thing about Gary is that he's not incompetent. I took his whole class, 24 hours long, on YouTube, his blockchain course at MIT. We know he was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, so he's deep into the Democratic Party. He's basically a politician. He understands crypto really well, but he regulates with a blunt instrument. I mean, what do you think is going on there?
He's paid off by the banks. There's no question about it. And especially look at his next move. What's he trying to do? Which I think is laughable. If this happens, we should all riot. If he becomes the Treasury Secretary, what a joke that would be. He's trying to take over for, as I call her, the Tweety Bird monster, Janet Fallon Yellen. He's trying to take over for her in the next election cycle. Well, people might be surprised. Before I talk out of turn here, let me look up Janet Yellen's net worth here. Her net worth is $20 million. Okay. She made in 2020, okay, in 2020 and 2021, she made 40% of her net worth in 1 year. 40% of that 20 million she made in 1 year. $7 million, whichever it could be as high as $12 million. Doing what? Making speeches on Zoom to banks. $7 million to make speeches on Zoom to banks. And then she becomes the Treasury Secretary. Open your eyes, people. The banks are driving all of this. Gary Gensler, Goldman Sachs. What is Goldman Sachs? Essentially, it's a bank. Okay. They're paying him off, and he knows the big money payoff that comes with that Treasury Secretary job. It's all about money for him. It's all about power, and it's all about control. Every time he makes these enforcement actions, you can read this as the banks are trying to enforce crypto. It's not Gary Gensler trying to enforce crypto. He's a paid puppet. Janet Yellen, also a paid puppet. Guys, who in the world thinks you can make $7 million giving speeches to banks on Zoom? Does anybody think that that's legit? Absolutely no one. They were paying her off because they knew she was going to be the Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, this is some important points you make. Sounds like a few documentary films to explain all this. But yeah, Gary is following his career path, which since he left Goldman and all the banks is now in government. And that government ladder only goes so far. I thought one day he might run for president, but why bother doing that when you can be Treasury Secretary or head of the Fed and just continue doing what you're doing? It's all complicit. There's a whole river of money there, whether you're at Goldman or outside of Goldman. Like you said, you still get paid one way or the other, and it's all this very similar agenda. Everyone's looking out for their own party, their own path. There's a lot of parallels here. Don't get me started with other branches of government and Fauci and all that other stuff, or the Twitter files. Right. We'll get to that. A couple of the people I want you to talk about. Kevin O'Leary, he's going in your sights. I mean, Jesus, I don't know how you have any time to sleep, Ben. You got SBF over here. You got Gensler over here. You're getting swatted. I'll talk about that later. And now you got Kevin O'Leary. What's the beef with Kevin O'Leary?
Yeah. Well, look, have you seen the documentary, The Tinder Swindler?
I haven't. I watched like a minute and then I just had better.
You should watch it. It's really good. I watched it with my wife last year. He's always talking about like, you don't understand. My enemies are after me. And I'm like, that's how I feel. Like I'm making new enemies every day. But you know what? It's okay. Kevin O'Leary, he smarted off to me on Twitter, and it pissed me off. You'll find a lot of these people that they personally offend me, and then that's the worst thing they ever did, because I'm like a bulldog. I never let go of them. We've destroyed Kevin O'Leary's image. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Once I started in on Kevin O'Leary, it's become very clear who he is. You could go as, I don't really like bringing up the deaths in Toronto, and the Muskogee Lake, I believe it is, or Muskogee. Can't remember exactly what it is right now. He was involved in 2 deaths. People can look into all that and find out the cover up that occurred there. Everybody in Toronto knows there was a cover up there. The people close to that story know. So I'm not gonna get too much into the details, but this is a bad guy. He covered up a lawsuit in 2019 against him for these ICOs that he promoted. He tried to cover that up as well. He's a cover-up guy. He does a lot of actions. He does anything to make money. If you pay him money, he will talk about anything. He does not care what it is. Obviously, look, FTX gave him $15 million. We got this guy saying, I lost all of my own money in FTX. But yet Sam paid you $15 million, and when you add up the money you lost, it's $10 million. So was that your own money? Or was that the money that he gave you and then you lost some of it? Or did you lose that money plus he gave you $15 million? It's hard to really say. This guy's a fraud. Kevin O'Leary is as big of a fraud as you can get. He's very involved in Washington, D.C., by the way, guys. I've been learning this from some politicians. He's behind the scenes doing a lot of stuff in Washington, which is why he got invited to go to the Senate hearing, to where I'm the champion of crypto. That's what he's trying to bill himself as, because we've destroyed his image so much that that's the only message he can kind of go with at this point. If you look at the crossover between his WonderFi fund and Alameda, it's also a very dark, dirty path. If you look at the comparison between FTX and his exchange in Canada that he bought the majority of, Bitfury, also very bad. He's involved with Immutable X. He's also involved with NFT.com. Both of those companies reached out through someone to me directly and said, hey, they want you to go easy on Kevin O'Leary. Let me tell you the dumbest thing you can do. Tell me to go easy on somebody. I'm not paid. I don't get paid off. I'm not in this because I'm trying to handle my image. Like, I'm in this because I'm tired of this freaking corruption in crypto. I'm tired of it. I'm done with it. I'm done with stock market 2.0. I'm done with the people that come into this space that want to turn it into traditional finance. And I think this is what people need to see about people like Kevin O'Leary. That's what they're trying to do. They want to turn it. Do you really think Kevin O'Leary gives a rip if a retail investor makes money or not? No. His entire life, he's been trained to be an assassin and take out retail investors. That's what he's trying to do in crypto. And we just don't stand for it anymore, and we're kicking him out. He's gone. He is not a crypto person any longer. I promise you that.
So he first started beef with you. You took it personally, but the more you look into it, you don't like what he stands for. He's out for himself. No. He's out for the old stock market version of crypto. You don't think it's consistent with anything you stand for or anything that we all stand for in the crypto industry. So you just marked him and you took the gloves off. You hit below the belts, and you're just like, yeah, that's the way I go, and that's the way you roll.
Yeah, there's no rules in a fair fight.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that.
Well,
I mean, look.
So next, tell me what you saw in these hearings, because I thought some of the most fascinating theater. For me, anything live on Capitol Hill is fascinating theater. When that Supreme Court justice got hurt a couple years ago, I thought that was fascinating. And watching the congressional hearing and the Senate hearing, what did you see? Obviously, Kevin was rolled out they really rolled out some fucking randoms for that thing. I mean, Jesus Christ, 2 people that were so anti-crypto, I don't even know if they knew anything about crypto. Then you had Kevin there. I mean, look, to his credit, he was the only guy making a convincing and plausible argument for crypto. That was good. Obviously, he was invited there because, he spends a lot of time on the Hill pushing.
Well, he was making that argument because he's trying to change his image in crypto. That's the only reason he was doing it.
And he believes it. No, to a certain extent.
No.
You don't think so?
No, he doesn't believe. Look, I mean, he knows crypto's coming. He knows crypto's the future. There's no doubt about that. But he took all of his time to try to throw Binance under the bus. Yeah, that's what he was. That's what he was doing.
So let's talk about that. So there he is, and he takes time out, and you only get about 3 minutes, and he decides to just overtly stand up, walk over, pick CZ up, and throw him underneath a bus that he had hired, and he threw CZ under the bus, and he basically said, It wasn't Sam's fault. It was CZ's fault because he was preventing Sam from getting regulation. And so then he had to force him to sell. What did you make of that? Most people were completely surprised. Did he have a point? What's he talking about with CZ?
Alameda has got one of the most spectacular propaganda arms we've ever seen. If you look at the amount of bots that they used.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.